Hello, this is Matt, again, and I thought tonight I would share another poem with you, also written in my 20s. This one is called Peniel, and I'll explain the title after I read it. But anyway, here it is. I have so many questions in my head on this stone, in the dreams I've dreamt in the night alone, climbing ladders to heavens I've never known. I've tried, my plans in pieces, and so too my pride. I've cried, my spirit raging like a storm inside. Promises, bigger than my eyes, higher than the stars, and my arms reaching for the skies. And now I'm here, wrestling in the night with the moon aglow, now with this stranger who may be friend or may be foe. But his eyes remind me of the laughter of a brother, the kiss of a lover, the passions and wars stilled by joy that is mine and is also yours. But I cannot employ strength alone to win, so wounded I've been, yet still I cling to him and reach for a blessing, and in my pain I ask this question: what is your name? Hold me with your wild eyes, heal me with your gentle hands, carry my soul to new lands, and whether or not you tell me your name, please make me a new man. So, like I said, I wrote this back in my 20s, probably around the same time as the last poem I shared about the Trinity. This one was inspired by one of my favorite stories in the Bible, which was the story of when Jacob wrestled with the angel, or with God, depending on how you interpret the story. There was something about it that always kind of spoke to me, and still does. Much as with the Christian faith in general, I have a complicated relationship with the Bible, but that's one of those parts of it that still resonates. Because I guess in some ways I can kind of relate to Jacob on a symbolic level. In the story, Jacob, for those who aren't familiar, he was one of the patriarchs of Israel. He actually he had his name changed to Israel after that encounter, and so he was the founder of the nation of Israel, or of the Jewish people in a sense. There was Abraham, and there was Isaac, and then there was Jacob. And so this is this encounter he has in the middle of the night. It's up until that point, I think the name Jacob meant supplanter, because like in the original story, he was born at the same time as his brother. His brother came out first, so he was kind of the firstborn, but then supposedly he grabs onto the ankle of his brother as he's coming out, and he's kind of this character where he's always trying to, through his own cleverness and shrewdness, he gets his own way, and he gets what he wants, and that's kind of who he is. He's kind of a smooth operator, but through this encounter with this angel, or with God, if you want to see it that way, he's humbled. He even ends up with a limp for the rest of his life, because his hip is knocked out of joint while he's wrestling. in some ways, it's almost like whatever he was wrestling with allowed him to win, but it came at a cost. And I remember there's this line, I think it's the last line, and the sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. That's kind of how the story ends. And Peniel was the place where he wrestled with God, or with this angel. And the name Peniel means the face of God, which you could say lends itself to the interpretation he was actually wrestling with God, taking on the form of an angel in this story. And the interesting thing is the name that he's given, Israel, means to wrestle with God. So you could say, like the nation of Israel, or the Jewish people, they identify themselves as Israel. Or you could say they are the ones who wrestle with God, if you look at it in that way. And something about that kind of, appeals to me or speaks to me, especially with my own experience with spirituality and everything I went through. It's like, I think on some level, all of us have to wrestle with God, or with the universe, or with reality, or whatever you want to call it. We have to contend with it. In my past experience, I said that I had kind of a rough time as a Christian. I had a rough time with, in my experience with religion. For me, the wrestling was very literal at times. I would go out in some quiet spot by myself in the middle of the night. Sometimes I had my dog, Shasta, my dog at the time. I had her with me. And, but I would go, to a park, or one of my, old school grounds, or in the middle of the night when no one was around. And there were times when I would be praying, but I would just be so confused and uncertain, and had so much anxiety about the nature of God and the nature of reality, and not understanding it, because I was exposed to a lot of more fundamentalist kind of Christianity, which was, some of their doctrines are very, I guess if you want to put it bluntly, they're soul crushing. And stuff like hell, and the just kind of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde image of God. And so, and I would wrestle back and forth between that, some of the things that I would hear in church, or that I would even see in the Bible, that had that kind of feeling for me, that weighed on me in that way. But at the same time, I had also had how I would have experiences in my life, like dreams and synchronicities and things I couldn't, that were meaningful, or even that I couldn't explain, that seemed to contradict what I was being taught. And so there were those times in the middle of the night when I'd be wrestling with all those things within myself, into where it was like a physical thing. I would tear at the ground and be racked with tears, and my whole body would just be tensed up, and there were times I'd scream, and I'm surprised no one ever came and found me in those moments. I guess I was lucky in that way, if you want to call it that. Moments like that were very painful for me. I felt very alone and just full of anxiety and fear and sometimes despair, because I didn't know what to believe or what to think or what to feel. But then there were other times I felt in those moments like I was being held by something, like something was sharing in my confusion and fear. And that would help me to get through it, I guess. But on a more general level, I've had to do that to some extent. Just wrestle with things in my life, wrestle with how the world is, and wondering what my place in the world is. And I think we all have to do that to some extent. In the poem, I was trying to capture, I guess, the feeling of that story, but I was also putting myself in there, and how I felt at the time. I think why I could relate to Jacob is he was reaching for a blessing. He was, even though he was a very flawed person, he wanted to be blessed. He wanted to be accepted by God, you could say, I guess. It's like, to put it one way, he was kind of a fuck up, and he but he still was reaching for that, for God's hand, I guess, reaching for God's love. And I can relate to that, because I felt like a fuck up myself at times. I felt that I'm not just who I should be. But I've reached for that. I've reached with that. There's been times I've reached for that with all my being, with every part of me. And I don't know, maybe it was God that was there with me in some of those moments, feeling as though I wasn't alone in that. Somehow there was something sharing in that with me. I guess that was one of the things that drew me to the Christian faith when it did, was that idea that God can share in our struggle and our pain, because that's in some ways what Jesus represented to me, was that if there was some kind of force behind things that created us, that put us into this world. But we're willing to share in our struggle and our pain, experience it for themselves. That, I guess, was beautiful to me and made me feel less alone. The thought that God, or whatever you want to call it, really understood me on an intimate level. Not like understanding me like someone would understand a math problem or a scientific formula, but understand me experientially, and like a friend or like a lover, I guess, like intimately, just from the inside out. Know what it's like to be in my shoes, in my skin. And I guess that's something that I try to hold on to, and I still believe on some level, or hope for. I hope it's true, because I don't have a whole lot of certainty, I admit. I have a lot of questions and doubts and about just a lot of things, not just God, but a lot of things. But I that's what I hope for, that those experiences I've had, that they do mean something, that they are real. And I guess to bring this around to everything that's going on in this world, I think we all have to wrestle with all these things. And it's difficult when all of us are born into the world, and we're surrounded by all these different voices saying so many different things, about religion, about politics, about social issues, about culture, about so many different things, and each of us has to decide what we think and what we feel and what we believe about any given thing, and it can be difficult knowing what's right and what's wrong, what's true and what's false. I admit I struggle sometimes just navigating everything, and I know I've had my blind spots. I know I've been mistaken so many times in my life, and I'm a work in progress. And I think we all are to some extent. I try to have humility, but like anyone else, I know I have an ego that I have to wrestle with. But I think my experiences have humbled me a little bit, given me a bit of a limp, you could say. Or at least I hope that's the case. So I try to hold on to that while I'm just wrestling with all the questions and about just everything. Like with everything going on here in my country, here in America, it can be so confusing and overwhelming, all the division and all the back and forth. And I mean, I have my opinions and my views, but I want there to be healing and peace. I want for us to be able to move, for my country and my world to be able to move forward in a better direction. And I know that us fighting each other and hating each other isn't going to make that happen. And so I wrestle with that because, I wrestle with, it's like I have people on different sides of things, on different sides of religion, different sides of politics, different sides of this or that, and there's a lot of things I'm not sure about and I'm undecided on, or I have questions about or concerns about, or I'm, I'm somebody who's, I don't feel comfortable always thinking in an us versus them kind of way, or thinking that one side has all the answers and the other side has none, or I feel like the world is a complicated place and there's so much that we don't know or understand. Each of us, we're just one person that has our own perspective. It's and I think we all have to wrestle with that. Like I was saying, I think we're here to learn and to love, and we have to wrestle with how do you do that in a world that's so complicated, where there's so many differences between people that can make things just bring tension and bring fear and uncertainty, because we don't always understand each other, and when you don't understand, it's difficult to trust each other, and so there's just so much that we have to wrestle with as human beings and try to figure out. And I guess, like I said at the end of the poem, please make me a new man. And I think that's what I've been wrestling with for a long time, is wanting to be, I guess, my true self, whoever that is. And I feel that has something to do with love and with being, I think that's what it means to be a human being, and I struggle with that because sometimes I feel like I suck at it. I suck at giving love. Sometimes I even suck at receiving it, because I struggle with loving myself too. And I'm trying to figure that out in this crazy world we live in, especially in a time like this. I guess all any of us can do is try and hope, and that's what I was wrestling with for so long. I was reaching out for help with that, because I don't feel like I can do it on my own. And if you're a religious or spiritual person who is open to some kind of higher power, then you can reach out for that, but if nothing else, we can reach out to each other for help wrestling with these things. And anyway, that's some of what I was thinking about. I've been thinking about these things. Just this, especially with the state of our country and our world at the moment, all this kind of came to mind, and I suppose it connects with this poem and the idea of just wrestling, because wrestling with God is, you could also say God kind of encompasses all of life and all of reality. If you're just wrestling with everything in a way, that's one way to look at it. And I guess you want to be everything that you can be in the everything, if you want to put it that way. And anyway, this is longer than I thought it would be, so I should probably finish this up. Well, hopefully some of what I shared resonates with you, and you can get something out of it. And I hope that whoever's listening, whatever you're wrestling with, that you too can find that sense that you're being held in the midst of that you're not alone in that, and that you can get through it. And maybe even see the face of God, or the face of love. Whatever that is to you. Oh, I think that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and have a good night.